right. You make her happy, so you'll be all right.
And happy wife normally is about happy life for me.
Right. That's what I'm saying. It ain't about her. It's about you.
So Van says that because Jewish people showed up for Black Americans during the Civil Rights era, he now feels compelled to stand with them now. Let me be clear.
What's the white liberal ideology I'm following?
I'm not saying you.
No, that's what you said. So I'm saying, which one?
No one is free until we are all free. There's no room for any injustice.
Peace, family. It's your brother, Marc Lamont Hill. You're watching the Marc Lamont Hill official YouTube channel. Welcome to Night School. If this is your first time here, Night School is our nightly program, Monday to Thursday at 10:30 p.m. right here on the Marc Lamont Hill official YouTube channel. This is not TV. This is not a podcast. This is a space where we come together, we break down ideas, we talk about what's going on in the world, but we don't just do sound bites. We don't just do talking points. We have real analysis, real conversation. It's where I put on my professor hat and we really get busy and break all kinds of stuff down. I got a lot to talk about tonight. We're talking about a Tennessee law that is going to allow teachers to arm themselves. Literally, teachers coming into classrooms with guns. This is a scary world, y'all. We got so much else going on in the world. We have Donald Trump heading to Atlanta, Georgia, where he greets voters in a very, very interesting way. We got a story about Nate Robinson, the basketball star, one of the greatest dunkers of all time, one of the most athletic little men in NBA history, who right now is trying to find a kidney to save his life. We got the Good Times reboot. You know, we rebooting everything these days, and Good Times is being rebooted, and Netflix is doing the rebooting. But the question is it good? Right now, the verdict is out, or the jury is out, and the verdict ain't so good. So we'll talk about all of that. But I want to start tonight with some unfortunate bad news, some news that I was not expecting, news that many of you hip hop heads know about. If you don't know about it, you'll probably be disappointed. Breaking news out of hip hop world: Mr. C has passed away. Mr. C, also known as the Finisher, the legendary DJ of Hot 97, one of the great talent scouts in rap music history, the Brooklyn native, live from Bedford-Stuyvesant. He got his start in hip hop when he was DJing for Big Daddy Kane. And if you remember Kane's debut album, Long Live the Kane, he was there. And Mr. C kept flourishing. Mr. C kept growing. Mr. C kept developing into a rap legend. And not only was he a rap legend, as a DJ, as somebody who made the greatest mixes maybe in hip hop history. If you were a Hot 97 kid growing up, or if you, like me, as an adult, you know, came around the Hot 97 when I moved to New York, I came to understand Mr. C's talent, Mr. C's impact, and the love that so many people around the world have for Mr. C. Of course, Mr. C, after he would DJ for Big Daddy Kane, he would go on to discover basically the notorious B.I.G., Biggie Smalls. He was one of the executive producers. He was an associate executive producer on Big's Ready to Die album, that amazing debut from Biggie Smalls. And if you know him, you know he would go on at the Throwback at Noon block or Hot 97, and he would play the classics. Mr. C had an ear. Mr. C had skills on the wheels of steel. Mr. C was one of the most gifted DJs probably in the world. But he also was always connected to the music. He was always connected to the artists. He had so much talent, but he also had so much love that he spread around the world. I love Mr. C. And so many people were students of his. So many young artists, so many young DJs, so many young MCs, so many young record label execs, so many young radio station leaders. They all sat at the feet of Mr. C. And even when he left Hot 97 in 2014, he continued to do his mixes. He continued to work for other stations. He continued to spread the love and also spread the DNA of hip hop. And that is what made Mr. C so special. I'm so sad to know that he passes away at the age of 57. 57 is too far for 57 is too young for anybody to die. 57 is too young for anybody to pass away, but especially our legends. They seem to be going so fast. And in hip hop, we're losing so many people so young. 57, I know some of y'all are in your 20s and 30s and you think 57 is old. I promise you it's not. 57 gonna sneak up on you real fast. And the thing to do to make sure that 57 sneaks up on you, but also 67 and 77 does, is that we have to take care of each other and we have to take care of ourselves. I don't know what Mr. C's health conditions are. I don't know why he passed away. I'm not saying anything about him. I'm speaking in general terms now. Losing anybody at 57 is tough. And so I hope that we're taking care of ourselves, that we're going to the doctor, that we're getting checkups. And if it's something that we can prevent, if it's something that we can avoid, I hope that we do. But when it comes to Mr. C, I know we're going to honor him properly. Hot 97 did a dope mix today. They played his mix from a couple years ago that he did for Biggie, for Biggie's, 50th birthday, I believe. It was like a tribute mix from a couple years ago. And there's going to be more conversation. There's going to be more analysis. There's going to be more tributes. There's going to be more love. And the only thing we should be saying about Mr. C right now should be the love. The only thing we should be talking about Mr. C right now is his legacy. The only conversation about Mr. C that I want to hear right now is one about how he impacted the game, how he changed the game, and how he is himself a hip hop legend. I got to move on to another story real quick. It's a story that I think is mind-blowing. It's a little funny, but it shouldn't be funny. Earlier today, Donald Trump showed up in Atlanta, Georgia. Donald Trump showed up in Atlanta, Georgia. And Mr. Trump, y'all president, some of y'all former presidents, some of y'all love this dude. He showed up to Chick-fil-A. Now, he already had an event scheduled. But Donald Trump decides that he's going to court some black voters. So what does he do? He goes to Chick-fil-A. Now, I already know what some of y'all going to say. Well, Joe Biden went to a black family and he had a chicken dinner with them. Something about these presidential candidates think that Negroes love chicken so much that you can just sit down with a 3-piece and we're going to vote for you. But at least Joe Biden showed up with the chicken. Donald Trump goes into Chick-fil-A and he orders 30 milkshakes. He said, y'all can have some of them and the rest we're going to take with us. I don't know how many milkshakes he actually left for people and how many he brought onto the van, but either way, this is a low bar. You can't expect to get black voters by walking into a Chick-fil-A. And yes, these people are smiling right now. You see them. But you got to understand, most people, when they see celebrities, they smile. Most people, when they see celebrities, they want pictures taken. I don't care if it's the tomato from the supermarket. If you see a tomato on TV, when you get to the supermarket, you want to take a picture with that tomato. Not because you care about tomatoes, but because it was on TV. It's just what people do. We love celebrity. We are a celebrity culture. But I hear people on the internet talking about, well, look at black people. They selling out. They see Donald Trump and they sell it. Don't assume that because Negroes smiled at Donald Trump, because Negroes took a picture with Donald Trump, that Negroes is going to vote for Donald Trump. I saw numbers that said black people were going to vote for Donald Trump at the rate of 20, 30%. Black men were going to vote at the rate of 20, 30%. I never trusted those polls. I never believed those polls. Donald Trump is going to get a very small slice of the black vote because black folk got good sense. And we might be a polite people. We might be a welcoming people. We are a loving people. We got home training. We're not going to disrespect Donald Trump. We're not going to throw shoes at him. We're not going to throw the milkshake in his face, even though he could deserve to have an Oreo cookie milkshake in his face. We're not going to do none of that because we're polite people. But please don't confuse Donald Trump getting some smiles in a Chick-fil-A with Donald Trump getting votes from the black community. But it is interesting that Donald Trump uses this as his black voter outreach. He didn't go to a black public school, doesn't go to a black community center, doesn't go to a black church. We saw him last time trying to clap on beating that black church. He didn't do any of that. Today is Eid al-Fitr. He could be at West End Masjid in Atlanta speaking to the black Muslim community. He ain't there. He definitely ain't going to be there. Shit, he might be trying to ban him. Donald Trump instead is in a Chick-fil-A doing a photo op. He signed a MAGA hat. He bought some milkshake. He didn't even buy chicken. How you gonna go to Chick-fil-A and only buy people milkshake? He didn't even get the 3-piece, you know what I mean? Or the nuggets, I should say. He didn't even get the nuggets. He didn't get the chicken sandwiches. Now, I'm not advocating that people shop or buy from Chick-fil-A. There's all kinds of reasons not to shop at Chick-fil-A, particularly in solidarity with our LGBTQ family, but also just doing the right thing and being good, decent human beings. But Donald Trump don't care about that stuff. He went there because his homie owns it. Just to be clear, Donald Trump went to that because his friend owned it. He's able to pat the back of another 1%er at the same time that he looks like he's coming to meet some black folk. And again, these black folk don't give a damn about Donald Trump. Don't get it confused. We do not give a damn about Donald Trump. What we do care about is our vote. What we do care about is our dignity. And we're going to preserve that. So don't worry, y'all. Don't worry. We're going to be all right. All right. On that note, it's time to talk about my guest of honor today. Because I have a guest of honor today. Let me see. I'm sending a note to my producer for a second. Give me 10 seconds, y'all. Give me 3 seconds, y'all. We live. There we go. Now we cooking. Now we cooking. All right, family. We have a guest of honor today. Right here on Night School, all the time, we have something called office hours where we sit down and do a Q&A with somebody important. Sometimes it's a scholar, sometimes it's an activist, sometimes it's a politician. Well, tonight, we got apparently all three rolled into one. Earlier today on Tavis Smiley's radio show, which everybody should be listening to. Every single one of y'all should be listening to Tavis Smiley's radio show on KTLA. It was announced that Dr. Cornell West's presidential run would now be augmented, supplemented, beautified, added, advantaged, enhanced by a vice president. And me and Tavis were actually talking on Monday about who that person would be. I said it needs to be somebody from the grassroots. It needs to be somebody who has a good political analysis. And I said, I hope it's a sister. Well, Cornell was listening, or he got good sense himself. I think it's the latter. And so he announced today that he would be joined on his presidential ticket in his independent run for the presidency in the 2024 election by Dr. Melina Abdullah. And we are blessed. We are absolutely blessed to be joined right now by Dr. Melina Abdullah. She is one of the most important and relevant activists we have around. She is a brilliant sister. She is powerful in her own right as a speaker. But now she's joining Dr. Cornell West's presidential ticket. Dr. Melina Abdullah, thank you so much for joining me right here on Night School. How are you doing today? First of all, Eid Mubarak to you.
Eid Kareem, Eid Kareem. It's a beautiful day. It's a beautiful day. And I got to start it with my brother Tavis and get to close it out with you, Brother Mark. And I never expected this day in my whole life. But
Really?
No, I never. You know why I cuss as much as I do? It's because I never expected to run for office.
That's fair. You said it wasn't going to come back to bite you.
No, I know somebody's going to pull up all the videos, starting with last week of me cussing. But my imam says it's okay because it's righteous cussing. It's deliberate. It's a prayer is what he says.
I love it. I love it. I love that. Cussing is dua. I got to write that one down. So tell me how this all started. You are announced today as the vice presidential choice of Dr. Cornell West, but what got you here? What was the process like? What was the journey like?
So like so many of us, I was completely uninspired and really, sickened by the duopoly. I'm sickened by, the embodiment of evil that, as you just reported, bought people milkshakes and thought that'll buy them black votes, right? I'm sickened, though, also by Joe Biden, who, young people of my children's generation, my children are 14, 17, and 20, they call him Genocide Joe. And, I can't call myself a person of faith and support a genocider. And that's what Joe Biden is. And so when Dr. West declared his candidacy for president of the United States, I became inspired. It restored my hope. And so I became an enthusiastic supporter of his campaign. When he would come to LA, if there was a fundraiser I could go to or an event that I could go to, I would go. He came to our 10th anniversary of Black Lives Matter in July of 2023, and he was our keynote speaker. And so I allowed myself to be inspired by him, not too differently than I was inspired by his scholarship when I was a young scholar, right? So, reading his work also committed me to kind of a liberatory model of education. And so as recently as a week and a half ago, I thought I was an enthusiastic supporter of Dr. West, and he came on my radio program on KBLA a couple weekends ago and had a great conversation. You know how those Dr. West conversations go. We talked about everything from Prince to Oakland to, politics, right? And it was a great conversation. And then a couple days later, he and his wife called me and they paused. And, Dr. West be going straight for it. So I wasn't used to that kind of pause. And then they said, well, we're just going to come out with it. And they asked me to be his vice presidential running mate. And my heart leapt out of my chest and my soul soared. And I wanted to say yes, because I'm a person who often moves by spirit. And then I had to pull myself back into myself and say, well, let me talk about it with a few folks. But my soul says yes. But then I called my daughter, my oldest daughter, who's at Howard, and she's my closest political comrade. And I called her, and Tandiwe said, absolutely. And she was more excited than me. And then I told her kids, and they all said yes. And then I asked my mama, because I'm 51, but I still ask my mom permission for anything that's major. And my mama and Baba said yes. And then our Black Lives Matter grassroots community checked in with them, and they all said yes. And so it was a yes, but I never, ever expected this to ever happen. And so I'm humbled and honored and grateful, and even more grateful, and find it absolutely a blessing that the announcement came on Eid, which, we never know when Eid is going to come for sure until the moon is spotted. We also didn't know what day this was going to come. And so I take this as a tremendous blessing and sign.
You are running for vice president on a ticket with a Jesus-loving Black man. You are a Black Muslim. I know there's no tension between you all, but did that play into your thought process, the issue of faith, and sort of how that might be received on the campaign trail?
Well, I know Dr. West, and I know that he loves everyone. I know that he has great respect for people of all faiths. And I know that there's really no daylight between a God-loving person, whether they call themselves Christian or Muslim or whatever faith they practice. I grew up at Greater Faith Baptist Church, right? I grew up Baptist and married into Islam 22 years ago. I'm single now, so have chosen Islam for myself. But I know that this is the path for me. And whatever path leads us to truth, love, and justice is the path. And I also don't take it lightly that I believe that I'm the first Muslim to run for this seat.
You absolutely are. As far as I know, I remember in 2008 when President Obama was running for president. At the time, as Senator Obama, there was a Green Party ticket, and I've been a lifelong member of the Green Party. and I voted for Cynthia McKinney and Rosa Clemente. And at that time, there were people who said, you can't do this. There's too much at stake. If you vote for the Green Party, we may end up with John McCain as president and the world is going to blow up. What do you say to people right now who say that whatever we were worried about back then, we should be doubly worried about now? If you were worried about McCain and you were worried about Romney and you were worried about even Bush, you need to be scared to death of Donald J. Trump.
Yeah, we should be scared of Donald Trump. We should be alarmed. So I don't believe in fear. So we should be alarmed. We should recognize Donald Trump as the devil that he is. We should absolutely recognize Donald Trump as the devil that he is. But just because someone is not the devil incarnate, as is Donald Trump, doesn't mean that they're working for good. And I think that and I want to say this, I got to be more careful with my words now. I think if the Democrats want our vote, they got to earn it. And genocide does not earn my vote. The abandonment of poor people doesn't earn my vote, right? Kind of selling out to corporate interests doesn't earn my vote. And so if the Democrats want our vote, they got to earn our vote, and they haven't earned it. In fact, they betray us constantly and then dare us not to vote for them by saying things like a vote for a third party is a vote for the devil, right? And I don't believe that's the case. I know that's not the case. I know that.
Let me push you on that a little bit. It's a question that we do have to wrestle with. And again, I voted Jill Stein in 2020, and I voted Jill Stein in 2016. Jill Stein didn't win. You'd be shocked to know Hillary Clinton didn't
I
win.
voted for Jill Stein too. Yeah.
Yeah. And Donald Trump won. And there isn't a day that goes by that somebody doesn't tell me, particularly since I came out of Pennsylvania, that had I made different choices, that had other people in my state of Pennsylvania made different choices, Hillary Clinton would be president and the world would be better than if Donald Trump would be president. We wouldn't have the Supreme Court makeup that we have right now. We wouldn't have lost affirmative action potentially. We wouldn't have lost Roe v. Wade. What do you say to people who accept the philosophical argument that we need to make different options and that no one's beholden to, that we're not beholden to anybody politically, that we should be able to vote whoever we want and the Democrats have to earn our vote? They say, yeah, that's good in theory, but in practice, if too many people don't vote for Joe Biden, Donald Trump wins. Simple math. And if that happens, then the world will be worse for the most vulnerable people among us.
I understand that fear, but I think I said I don't believe in fear, right? And fear is not going to get me to do something I don't want to do, right? Or the attempt to make me fearful isn't going to get me to do something I don't want to do. I'm going to also say that I live in California, so that actually doesn't hold much water for me.
Matter, right? It don't matter, right, California,
right? But also, I mentioned that I have 3 children. 2 of my children will be voting for the first time in this presidential election, or voting for the first time in a presidential election. My 20-year-old voted in midterms, right? And neither of them were going to vote for Joe Biden if we were on the ticket or not on the ticket. They might have voted for some down ballot candidates. They might have voted for some ballot propositions, but they were not going to vote for Joe Biden. I think what Dr. West and I are doing, and if you look at the data, there is no data to support the idea that third-party candidates steal votes from other candidates, right? There is data to support the idea that we spur folks to vote who might not ordinarily vote. And I want to be clear, I know this because my PhD is actually in political science, right? So I do study this data, right? So most of the folks who will be voting for Dr. West and now me, right, are encouraged because they want a message that says we live in a world of abundance. People can have all of what they need and most of what they want if we make the decision to make it so, right? We can end U.S. empire if we make the decision to make it so. We can make sure people have universal rights to housing and healthcare and good food and safe communities if we make that decision. And so I think that what we're doing is inspiring people to vote who wouldn't ordinarily vote. And if a few folks are saying, you know, Biden ain't for me, that's because Biden didn't earn their vote.
So, and this is the last thing I'll ask you on this, because I want to hear more about your platform. If you knew, and I asked Cornell the same question, if you knew going into October that the election was razor thin, I'm talking about Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Virginia, if they were all within the margin of error, and the data suggested that you all could be difference makers, would it change your decision to stay in the race?
So this is my first day as a vice presidential candidate. We haven't had that conversation yet.
Okay, that's fair. Talk to me about the platform. You know, I've heard Cornell.
Hey, brother, I'm gonna get up for a second and grab this charger cord.
Please do.
Okay.
Y'all, we out here with Dr. Melina Abdullah. She is running for vice president on the ticket where Cornell West is running for president of the United States on the independent ticket. They have a vision of a presidential run that will challenge the duopoly, that will challenge corporate power. I can't wait to hear more about that. In the meantime, y'all, write your questions in the comment section. I want to know what you all think. I want you all to have a series of questions for Dr. Abdullah, because what's the point of having somebody live if we're not going to ask the questions that we're thinking? This is an opportunity to engage. Remember, this is not regular TV, y'all. Y'all not just watching, y'all are engaged in this. So please have your live questions. Also, in the meantime, I want to shout out some of the people here: Abel Tesfaye, Lynn Stacks, Mo Reese. Thank y'all for being Marc Lamont Hill channel subscribers. Barzita Brujita, I appreciate you. Kelsey Soloway, Lynn Stacks, Chad Zichterman. Thank you all for being channel members. Mila, thank you so much for being channel members. Alexa Jones, thank you for being channel members. Karen D, thank you for being channel members. Navia Bella, thank you for being channel members. Yo, we love y'all. We appreciate y'all for all the work that you do. Supporting the channel, for showing up every night. And everybody, if this is your first time watching Night School, please understand that this is not an aberration. Every single night, we got the dopest guests. We got the best conversation. We got the most rigorous analysis of what's going on in the world. And it's not just me sharing. The great part about Night School is we get voices from around the world who come in, who weigh in, who speak the truth. And these are people who I bring in not because they're media darlings, not because they're brilliant people in the corporate academy, not because they're best-selling authors. Now, they may be all of those things. They might be brilliant and decorated and rich and famous. They could be all of those things. But we only bring people here who are willing to tell the truth, who are willing to be courageous in their voice, and who are willing to offer this audience, this community, something that's not already there. And that's what Melina Abdullah is doing right now. And she's back with her charger.
Yeah, little technical issues. Didn't want the computer to die.
I understand. Now you charged up. So talk to me about, what are the issues? First of all, what are the issues that you two as a duo are foregrounding in your campaign?
Well, almost all of our planks on our policy platform end with the word justice. So racial justice, absolutely recognizing that we can move forward or we can move back. And I think both of the political parties are either, in some sense, people of color, especially Black people, are being set back. And so we believe in reparations, right? We understand that you can't start running a race late and then they say, what's wrong with you, right? We believe in fairness, fundamental fairness, through the expansion of things like affirmative action, right? We know that there has to be gender justice, and gender justice isn't just about the right to have an abortion. It's also about the right to raise your children and have enough resources to do so. It's also about things like, I have this young sister who's a young comrade of mine. Her name is Manju, and she's the founder of an organization called Operation Period. And I think that you and I, you're a little younger than me, but you and I are of a generation where we didn't think about things like it is oppressive to women that we have to pay for period products, and period products should be free. And then, yeah. And how does that particularly impact sisters in prison or poor sisters, right? So gender justice is hugely important. Environmental justice. And when we talk about environmental justice, we're not talking about just save the trees or save the whales. We're also talking about clean water in Jackson and the still clean water they don't have in Flint, Michigan, right? We're talking about, when we talk about justice, we're talking about economic justice. You shouldn't have to work 2 and 3 and 4 jobs to pay your rent, right? People should have a right to safe and warm and good housing as a human right, because you were born into this world as a human being. And so what do all of those things mean? And then, of course, as we talk about, things like foreign policy, we have to absolutely end the American empire. And that means a free Palestine. That means paying attention to what's happening in Haiti and on the continent. That means making sure that corporate and capitalist interests don't run rampant throughout the world.
So let's talk about a few of those things you've mentioned. I got people writing in already with questions. Karen D writes in and says, Dr. Abdullah, what is your position on abortion and a woman's right to choose? What do you say?
Oh, I absolutely believe that it is your own decision. What you do with your body, what I do with my body is my own decision. I don't know what else I need to say on that.
There was a bill or a decision made, I should say, just the other day, where in Arizona, where they're saying, wait a minute, we're going to go back to the bill from 1864, the law of I believe it was 64. So where the state before had a 15-week abortion window, they're now saying no abortion, at least based on this old law, no abortions, even under the case of incest and rape. I know you don't agree with that. What's a reasonable period? What should the law allow for in terms of abortion? How long?
I don't know. And I just want to say what I don't know. I don't know how long of a period. I do know that the idea of blocking women from being able to make decisions for themselves is oppressive.
Fair enough. You talked about reparations. There's a lot of debates about reparations, a lot of conversation about reparations. One of the things I found is when I talk to some of the Democratic Party candidates, they say they like reparations. They say they're down for reparations. But when I scratch underneath the surface even a little bit, what they really want is just some targeted investments to all people in some areas. And sometimes they're not even that targeted, right? What does reparations look like for you? Is it a check? Is it what does it look like?
So I live in California, right? We're working on reparations here in the state of California.
Yeah.
And some of those ideas that you mentioned have been introduced. Tax breaks for Black people, right? Look, all of that is good. Free education for Black people. That's free higher education for Black people. That's good. But unless there's a check attached to it, unless it's a check plus, it's not reparations. So reparations needs to start with run me my check, right? And then we can get to the other things.
There are people who say that check should be for all Black people here because we're all impacted by the legacy of slavery and white supremacy, more specifically. Other people say it should only be for the descendants of American slavery. What do you say?
I say I don't understand why Black people are trying to block other Black people, right? I say I'm a Pan-Africanist, and I think it's an extremely narrow view to act as if Black people from the Caribbean weren't enslaved. It means that they should take a comparative slavery class so they understand. It means that they don't understand what was lost by continental Africans when our foremothers and forefathers were taken from villages, right? And so I believe that we shouldn't be trying to say this is who should get reparations. We should say all Black people get reparations. And I am a Pan-Africanist, and I know that makes some of the people in certain groups angry.
Oh yeah,
very angry.
I have Yvette Cornell coming on, I believe on Friday night. We're going to have a conversation, a special episode of Office Hours. And I know what she would say to you, I believe, and I don't want to speak for Yvette, but I think what she would say is Caribbean Americans do deserve reparations, and CARICOM is for them. They have their justice claim somewhere else. But the people here in the United States are Black people who are descendants of slaves, and they exclusively deserve it because they're the ones who built this country. And that's not divisive. That's just the targeted justice claim. And she would probably push back against your Pan-Africanism.
Yeah.
That doesn't bother you too much.
No, it doesn't bother me at all. And I think that what kind of people are we when we trying to block other people from getting, who are our people, other people who are our people, from getting what they are also due? Why are we trying to do this? It doesn't make sense to me. If the people who owe it want to fight about it, let them fight about it. But it shouldn't be Black people trying to block other Black people from getting reparations.
You mentioned ending American imperialism. What does that mean for you in concrete terms? Like, what would that look like? What kind of things would we be doing differently? What kind of moves do we have to make to end American imperialism?
Okay. See, it's late, and I probably shouldn't say what I'm gonna say, but I'm gonna say it because our platform is truth, love, and justice, right?
That's it.
So American empire is tethered to capitalism. You're going to have American empire anytime you have a system of predatory capitalism like the one our economic system is rooted in, right? Because corporations require imperial powers to take over space so that they can run rampant and reap profits that are unearned profits at the expense of human life. And so I think that you can't end American imperialism without also ending predatory capitalism.
You say in predatory capitalism, does that mean that you're okay with some form of capitalism as long as it's regulated, or is the end game a different social arrangement? And you're talking to somebody who's looking for a different social arrangement. So this ain't a setup. I'm saying I'm looking for something else.
So as a Pan-Africanist, I believe in African scientific socialism. And that's where I am. I'm a follower of Julius Nyerere, right? I use the term predatory capitalism because a lot of folks are uncomfortable when you say just straight up capitalism is evil.
Right.
And I don't have time to draw the whole diagram on the board and show how capitalism steals from all working class people. Even if you think you're doing all right, you're still being exploited, right? Even if you have a house that's beautiful and you get a new car every couple of years, you're still being exploited as a member of the working class because the capitalist class makes their profit off of the unpaid labor of the worker. And so if you are a worker, you are being exploited, some to greater degrees than others. But you know, hey, we'll quote Minister Malcolm, right? You simply cannot have capitalism without racism. You cannot have capitalism without imperialism.
Mm. You are entering this race, entering this conversation at a very interesting time in history, a very interesting time even in our current political crisis. And I'm talking specifically right now about what's going on in Gaza. Since October 7th, there's been what I would consider a genocide in Gaza. And the United States has been not only sort of silently complicit, but actively complicit through weapons, through defense systems, through diplomatic protection, through political protection in terms of international legal bodies, watching the U.S. veto ceasefire resolutions at the UN Security Council. All the stuff is happening. What does a proper and principled stance on Palestine look like? Not as an activist, not as an observer, not as even as a scholar, but as Vice President and President of the United States. What would the proper approach to Palestine be?
So let me say first that, Brother Mark, you've been one of the most courageous, outspoken, divinely guided human beings in this fight. And I look to you often for where we should stand on things. I think that you embody the truth of who we've been as Black people around seeing ourselves in the struggles of folks other than ourselves, but seeing parallels, right? What we're witnessing in Palestine feels similar because it is similar, right? When we're witnessing, even before October 7th, right?
Oh, yeah.
The largest open air prison in history, right? We're witnessing family separation. And sometimes I remember when we would talk about family separation with regard to the southern border, I would say that feels familiar because Black families have always been separated. It resonates because we know what it's like, what natal alienation means, right? And so I think that the only thing we can fight for is not just a ceasefire. We still say ceasefire now, and we want a permanent ceasefire. But we also have to say free Palestine, right? Yeah. So this did not start October 7th. This started more than 75 years ago, right? When someone came into someone else's home, took it, and then dehumanized the people who were there and said that this is no longer your home. And so we need a free Palestine. And I think that is the only solution. And I know Dr. West feels the same that I do, that's what we must fight for. We have to fight for a free Palestine.
You said that you and Professor West are on the same page on that issue, and I'm sure you're on the same page on lots of issues. What are the issues where you all see some differences, where you all have some tensions?
So far, I haven't discovered them. I can say where the language I use is a lot stronger around police abolition. I'm
glad you said that. Talk to me about that, because that's where I was going. One of the things I wondered about, you have been unequivocal about prison abolition, police abolition. I hear Cornell West use the language of abolition increasingly over the last year or two. But sometimes folk are saying abolition and they mean reform. Sometimes people are saying abolition and they mean something different, similar to the reparations conversation. In addition to the kind of different approach to languaging it, is there a substantive difference between you and him on the question of policing or prisons?
I don't know that there's a substantively different belief. I can say that there has been difference in language. So for me, I'm very clear. And I think it takes all of us a while to get there. So I'm one of the founding members of the Black Lives Matter movement, right? So the first ever meeting, the first ever marches, July 13th, 2013, here in Los Angeles, where Black Lives Matter was born, I was part of that, right? Even saying that, and I was a part of the fight to end police abuse before that. So I was a part of the fight for justice for Oscar Grant and justice for Margaret Mitchell and justice for Devin Brown. I can say all of that. But I think it took me some time in building this movement to understand why we have to completely abolish this system, why this is a completely irredeemable system, because what we're doing is undoing decades of conditioning that says the only place you find safety is in police, when Black people, we know we ain't never found safety in police. We know that. But everything that's told to us is you find safety in police. So you have to deprogram yourself. So it took me a while, even in this movement, to understand that even if your uncle who's a cop, you know, people always say, I got an uncle who's a cop and he's funny at the dinner table, right? Yes. And he works for a brutal, murderous system. And so if you want to love your uncle, you need to lovingly tell him he needs to quit his job, right? So I'm very clear that we cannot redeem a system of policing that descends from slave catching. We cannot redeem a prison system that descends from plantations. We have to build a system, build new systems of public safety that actually bring safety to Black people and, by extension, everybody else.
That is a powerful thought, a powerful idea. This idea of producing new worlds, new social arrangements, new responses to harm, new ways of maneuvering through the world. There are a lot of people who can't imagine that. They like, all I know is when somebody gets shot, I need the police, you know, or I feel unsafe out in the world, I need the police. And as an abolitionist myself, I find that work to be among the most important work, getting people to imagine new possibilities, getting people to think outside of the carceral mindset. I know how you do that as an activist, and I have a sense of how you do that as a scholar, as a teacher. As a presidential and vice presidential candidate, what's the goal? How do you plan to reach out to voters to get them to think beyond the status quo, to think beyond the pragmatic? Because the pragmatic says y'all can't win. There's no point in running. Vote for Biden. You know, fear Trump. You're trying to get people to imagine something else. How do you do that?
Well, really, that's the whole point of this campaign, right? So the person that I summon into my spirit, or have summoned into my spirit every day since this invitation was offered, is Charlotta Bass. And Charlotta Bass is the first Black woman to run for vice president. She ran in 1952 on the Progressive Party ticket. And she said, win or lose, we win by raising the issues. What Dr. West and I offer is an alternative view of the world, a radical imagining. When we think about, you know, people like Robin Kelly, who encourage us to radically imagine the world, because if you don't radically imagine, you only gonna get what you've always had. And so we radically imagine the world. And for Black people, think about it. You know, you started off with a story about hip hop, right? How did we birth hip hop? With no instruments, right? We invent a whole music form, several of them, as Beyonce is reminding us, right? So how did we do that? It's the radical imagination of Black people, right? How do our mothers and grandmothers create soul food out of scraps, right? It's a radical imagination, right? Yeah. And so we have to radically reimagine the world. We have to challenge people to dig into what we know in our own souls and our own spirits. You know, I live in Los Angeles, where we have the largest unhoused population in the nation. And someone said 75%, but it's actually 82% of the unhoused on Skid Row are Black people. And we know in our souls that when you see tents out there, that's not right. You know, there was a little 1-year-old baby who froze to death in Los Angeles just a couple months ago. We have to know that that is an evil. And so in the face of evil, what can we do other than work for right? We have to work for right. So this campaign is about knowing what's in your soul. It's about saying we don't have to accept what we've been given. It's about summoning ancestral power. You know, I say we are Mama Harriet Tubman abolitionists, right? Think about Mama Harriet. Nobody had ever seen freedom like, we couldn't imagine a world where chattel slavery was toppled, right? Or hadn't seen it, but she had the vision to imagine it and get everyone else to also imagine it, right? And it's not just Mama Harriet on her own, but all of those in that abolitionist movement. And so that's what we're doing, is saying that we can imagine a world where we have, again, all of what we need: housing, healthcare, education from birth to doctorate, right? We can have all of those things if we make the decision to make it so.
You have mentioned BLM being a foundational member, an organizing member, founding member. How do you sort of think about the trajectory of BLM, which goes from small grassroots movement to international movement to maligned to sort of this moment right now, in terms of how that will play into the campaign? In other words, does the BLM label, does the BLM conversation undermine or at least work against you all as you run for this office?
So my allegiance is to my people, right? If I wanted to run for office to feed my ego or to feed my ambition, I could have done that, right? I could have done that a long time ago. That's not why I'm running, right? I'm running because I believe in Black Lives Matter. I believe that Black Lives matter. I believe in making Black Lives matter. And so I wouldn't run to abandon the movement because I want to be elected. I'm bringing the movement with me, right? I'm grateful that the many, many grassroots organizers, the boots on the ground organizers who I consulted with before I said yes, right, understand that we're all moving forward. And this is a way to uplift what we mean when we say defund the police, what we mean when we say we're abolitionists, what kinds of things we want for our people. I also want to be clear that one of my greatest heartbreaks has been the theft of the soul of Black Lives Matter, right?
Say more.
So, you mentioned that Black Lives Matter, we were a small grassroots organization. We were just mamas and educators and bus drivers and babas. And, people like Baba Akili and Sister Jan and Mama Paula and I would be out, and sometimes it would be 5 of us. Sometimes it would be 50 of us. We had lots of victories, including the ousting of a district attorney, including, winning some policy victories, including just igniting a movement, right? Including making it okay to be unapologetically Black. If people remember pre-2013, we used to always have to follow up Black by saying Black and brown or people of color, right? And now
couldn't just be Black. Couldn't just say Black.
You couldn't just say Black. Now, think about that victory. We can say this is what Black folks want. I am Black. I'm unapologetically Black and I'm fighting for Black people. Right now we can say it, right? 2020, I never expected a renaissance of Black Lives Matter, like 7 years into the movement. I never expected that. I described it as a moment when the world cracked wide open, right? We'd been saying defund the police. I didn't expect it to become a mantra and anthem, the clarion call, right? But that happened, and it was a beautiful moment to, there was a call, and I'm going to tell you this. I don't think I've ever told this story. Kendrick Sampson, who's an actor and one of my best friends in my...
From Insecure, y'all. That's the brother, the light-skinned one from Insecure that Issa should have chose. Continue.
Yeah, Nathan from Insecure, right? Yeah. He's also my Spades nemesis, right? So after... George Floyd was murdered and we all witnessed it, Kendrick calls, because neither of us sleep very much, and he calls at like 2:00 in the morning. And he's like, what we gonna do? And so the next day was our weekly protest anyway. And we had been doing them online because of the pandemic. And we said, okay, we got to do it in person. So we did that, expecting, more people than usual, but not 5,000 people.
Right. People, right.
Right. So we did a freeway shutdown because you don't waste, thousands of people. You do something bigger, right? And thankfully, our normal protest site was right next to a freeway. But we also planned a protest for that Saturday when more people would be off work and available. And we met in Pan Pacific Park, which is this park that's near Beverly Hills. And it's a big park. And we couldn't see, a friend of mine describes it this way, we couldn't see our own feet on the ground. There were tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people that day. And it was a moment that the world cracked wide open. And it was a beautiful, beautiful inflection point. And we also have to remember that counter forces are always at work. And so that Saturday protest, Kendrick was shot repeatedly with rubber bullets. His friend's leg was broken so badly that his bone was sticking out of his skin. But we also had an opportunity to move the movement forward. We didn't see other counter forces forming, which were plotting and planning on Black Lives Matter from within. And so a year and a half later, some highly paid consultants who had been hired, and one of the co-founders of Black Lives Matter and I had been very dear friends and sisters, and we had an agreement that she would run the infrastructure part and I would organize on the ground with all of the 40 chapters that we had. And so we kind of developed it into Black Lives Matter Global Network Foundation, which was her side of things, and Black Lives Matter Grassroots, which was my side of things. So she would do infrastructure and raise money, and I would be the boots on the ground with the other boots on the ground. None of us were paid, right? On the Black Lives Matter Grassroots side.
That's an important distinction you make right there, because there are a lot of people who hear BLM and they hear multi-million-dollar grants, they hear mansions, they hear houses. What do you say to people who are raising concerns about all of the allegations of money and impropriety with BLM? One, in terms of your own character and credibility, but two, what it might do to a campaign, because those questions are coming. The world, if y'all make even a inch of headway, the attacks are going to come. The questions are going to come. How do you deal with that? How do you think about that?
Well, long story short is when Patrice stepped back for her own reasons. And, I don't want to minimize, how people are affected by attacks. So she suffered differently than I did. Okay. And she stepped back and gave legal control to this highly paid consultant. He ultimately stole it. And so all the money was taken by the person. So I said I wasn't going to. A friend of mine has a saying, don't give other people a tan off of your sunshine, but I'll say it for you, that his name is Shalomia Bowers, Bowers Consulting. He's now going by the name Shalomia B, because I used to not call him Shalomia because he gave that name to himself. And I think he's trying to dodge his birth name because he also, I'm finding out now, was part of other scams.
Okay. Shalomia Bowers, though. We're going to do our own research on this to find out.
Right. So he basically ran off with the money and the platforms. Not basically, he did run off with the money and the platforms. And anybody who does their own investigation can look at the only 2 990s that have been filed by them and see that the first year that he had control, he paid himself $2.3 million. The second year, he paid himself $1.7 million. And that's only what we can see in their own tax filings.
Wow.
So we can't see like all of the kickbacks that I'm hearing. I don't have much proof. I have a little proof that some of those grants that were given to those grassroots organizations that nobody ever heard of, he was giving out those grants, telling people, I'll give you $500,000. You hire me, put me on a contract for $200,000 and you keep the rest, right? So those are kickbacks. That's not something you can look up on the 990s, but a couple people have sent me correspondence around that. So I can't prove it, but those are the allegations. September 1st, 2022. So here's the wrap up. We had been trying to amicably or through movement get those resources back. Because imagine if a radical movement actually had $90 million. Imagine what we could do, right? And I also should put it in context. 90 million, I know we think that's a great sum of money, and it is. We could do powerful work, but the NAACP got 200 million in that same time period, right? The ACLU, I think, got something like $500 million during that same time period. So nobody's going after them the same way they're coming after BLM. But if we had,
in fairness, with the ACLU and with the NAACP, there are fewer questions. I don't know of any questions about where that money was spent or how it was used. Or with BLM, people are both hearing these sort of allegations about people like Shalomia, giving themselves $2.1 million in salary, but they're also talking about, again, the mansions, the money being spent, and the argument that stuff didn't make it to the grassroots branches around the country. Your name wasn't really put in it until later. It seemed like it was more the founders whose names got put in. And I spent a lot of time, and Patrice is a friend of mine. I interviewed her, we talked to her, I've heard her explanation for it. But now that you're running for vice president, your name's going to be in the mix, and you're going to be all up in that mix.
Oh, they're going to keep reposting this one photo that they have in 2021. Patrice invited Alicia Garza and I over to the mansion, which I didn't know we had bought, or the Global Network Foundation had bought. I didn't know that this was property owned by the Global Network Foundation. I was actually lied to and told that it belonged to a white benefactor, right? So
who told you that?
I'm not going to say that part.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not going to say that part. But
I gotta ask. You ain't gotta tell me, but I gotta ask.
Yeah. But we're in the backyard and there's a charcuterie board, and I'm gonna be straight up. I do like cheese. So
ain't nothing wrong with that.
I like some good cheese too, right? So there's a charcuterie board and there's some champagne, which was not good champagne. It was like Ralph's brand champagne, right? But we were sitting there, and it was supposed to be a celebration of our work. And so there's this moment where, and Patrice is having it videotaped. And there's this moment where we
This
cheer.
is the image you're talking about, right?
That's it, right?
Okay.
There's this moment when we toast, and there's a photo of that toast. Or this is the scene, though. And we're talking about the movement. And I don't regret anything that I said in the actual interview. I meant everything that I said. But the optics look terrible, right?
Yeah.
And so I don't think the optics would have looked terrible if we were sitting at some white benefactor's house talking about our work. But when it's a mansion that's owned by Black Lives Matter, it's a whole different context. So if I'd known, I probably would have said, I'm going to sit this interview out. I'm going to sit this conversation out. But this is, basically the only accusation that I know of about me is that I once drank Ralph's brand champagne and ate some cheese in a backyard with Patrice and Alicia. And, you know, that's true. I've never paid myself, though. I've never taken money. I've never had contracts. I've never done all of that, any of that. And I think if we had those resources, which is why, just to fast forward again, September 1st, 2022, we decided to file a lawsuit against the Global Network Foundation for the return of our resources and platforms and good name. And unfortunately, because they have all the money in the world, or what feels like all the money in the world, I understand. Yeah, I understand their lead attorney is the same lead attorney as Hillary Clinton has. We can't afford him. I wouldn't hire him anyway, but we can't afford him. And so they filed something called an anti-SLAPP motion, which blocked us from even going to court and presenting our evidence. But I am grateful that we filed that suit so that we could at least distinguish ourselves and say Black Lives Matter grassroots still exists. We're still the boots on the ground. We're still 33 chapters, bringing on 9 new chapters this year. And, you know, as we talk about the conviction.
You ain't worried about the name. You know, like back in the day when I remember in the 90s, Value Jet. You know what I mean? I used to go home from flying from Morehouse to Philly on Value Jet. It was like $79 for a flight. It was great. Then they crashed a couple times. Then it was like, you know what? We need to change the name. You know, the same airline, but we just can't be flying on Value Jet if it crashed. Do you worry that the name BLM it has been tainted so much that you need something different?
Well, here's what it is. This is a baby that I helped to birth. And so why should Shalomia Bowers or his band of thieves get to steal what I helped to birth? And so that's where I've been. It doesn't mean, you know, that I won't change my mind or we won't change our mind. We've begun to talk about, and Black Lives Matter Detroit is helping us lead this, actually, at least visual branding, so folks know the difference. So you know that black and yellow is them, and when we incorporate the red, black, and green, that's us, right?
Nice.
And so, you know, we're grappling with it, but again, we built a movement that's based on group-centered leadership. So I'm grateful to be able to now serve as director of Black Lives Matter Grassroots. But I'm not the only decision maker, and I'm not the only voice in the movement. So collectively, we'll figure out what we want to do.
When you decided to run for vice president, did you make a commitment to taking off from work? Did you decide that the organizing is going to take us backseat? Activism for the next few months is going to look different. So what in your life changes when you run for vice president?
Less sleep.
Is that possible? You don't get but a few hours anyway.
Yeah, no, less sleep. I mean, we'll see what it looks like. I'm committed to still teaching. I talked to my dean about it. My dean is phenomenal and has been really, really, this is why a College of Ethnic Studies is everything, right? And has committed to giving me a more flexible teaching schedule so I don't have to teach all of my classes on campus, right? So that's beautiful, but I can't step away from the movement today, and then I'll be quiet. And if you want to ask me anything else, it's fine. But this is April 10th is the angelversary of a brother named Grishario Mack, and Grishario Mack was a Black father who was experiencing a mental health crisis inside the Crenshaw Baldwin Hills Mall on April 10th of 2018. And he needed help. And he wasn't bothering anybody, but he was talking to himself and had a kitchen knife with him. And LAPD came into the Black Mall in Los Angeles, ran up the escalators with, quote, every gun blazing, shot this Black father to death, and in the process shot up GameStop shot up, TJ Maxx shot up the whole mall. Baby strollers were left strewn about.
My God.
And thankfully, no one else was killed. But Grishario Mack leaves 2 little girls without their father. And I can't step away from that. Over the last 6 years, the Mack family, the Moore family, the Walker family has become my family. Tomorrow is the angelversary of Kenneth Ross Jr., another young Black father who was killed by a multi-murderer cop. Michael Robbins had already shot 3 people before moving to Gardena Police Department and killing Kenneth Ross Jr. And tomorrow I'll be with his mom, Sister Fuzia, who's become like a sister to me. And every year we go to Kenneth's gravesite and, drink champagne there in Kenneth's name, pour a little bit out for him. And so I'll never leave the movement. I'll never leave the movement. And so the goal, again, of this vice presidential run is to bring the movement along so that on your show, I can speak the name Kenneth Ross Jr. and Grishario Mack. Dante Wright, his angelversary is also tomorrow. Dante Wright killed by Brooklyn Center Police, by actually the former president of that police association, Kim Potter, murdered Dante Wright. And so I can't leave the movement because in many ways, the movement has given me greater purpose and has become my family.
There is a question that I ask all candidates, all activists, everybody, which is, how can the people support you? What do you need?
We need more warriors, right? We need more warriors. We need boots on the ground. We need boots on the ground for this presidential campaign. And we know that we're running as independents. And so that is a hard hill to climb, right? And so here in California, the only way we get on the ballot is by registering a new political party, the Justice for All Party. And we're doing that in California and several other states. So we want people to re-register under the Justice for All Party, right?
I see. Because you can't just wait for the general election and write you in or vote because you won't be on the ballot.
We won't be on the ballot.
So they need to register for Justice for All Party, and then you'll get on the ballot.
Right. In some states, we're going to be on under smaller political parties. But that's not most states. So we need to get on the ballot that way. And then in some states, it will be a write-in campaign. We need volunteers because we don't have no whole lot of money. What did Donald Trump raise in Florida the other day? Like $100 million or something crazy in one dinner.
And y'all fellow independent candidate Robert Kennedy just signed up with a billionaire to run for office. So, they made different choices.
Right.
Unless you have $1 billion I don't know about.
Nope. Nope. Look, the lights in the front of my house don't even work. Right? So, we need volunteers. We don't have a whole lot of money, but we got a whole lot of love. Look, I can guarantee you, if you come to our campaign office or, wherever we setting up shop, we gonna have the best music. I guarantee you that.
No, that's right.
Right.
I done hung out with Cornell some nights. He had me jamming. You know what I mean?
Man, I know he played you some Sly and the Family Stone.
You already know.
Yeah.
You already know. And he was playing some deep cuts too, man. He had us all rocking, man. It was a beautiful thing. There's a question. Before you guys, I want to ask you one more question, or maybe two more. One is coming in from the audience. I don't know if this is the case or not. Did I lose it? It was about, I want to bring it up and read it directly. Oh, it was about Shaun King. Somebody said, I'll bring it up so you see. Gator said, Mark, can you please ask Melina why she supports Shaun King, even though Black women keep saying he's a scam? I'm not saying Shaun is a scam. I want to be very clear about that. What I am saying is there's a lot of controversy around Sean, and he just became Muslim as well, by the way. Eid Mubarak, I sent him a note and his wife a note. What is that relationship like? And is he someone that we can trust based on your opinion, based on your take?
So, mashallah, I'm so excited to welcome them into the Muslim family. It's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing, right? People keep saying he's a scammer, or like, I never even, do you know any Black people who use the word grifter before?
I don't know. Only on Twitter. Only on Twitter.
Right. So I'm going, where'd that word even come from? I ain't never heard the word grifter, right? So they say that, but I don't see any receipts of that, right? Like, so they say he stole money from families, but then the very same families they say he stole money from say, no, he didn't. So unless somebody can show me receipts, I'm going to say this, the receipts I do have is anytime I ask Sean for something, he never says no. So if I say, Sean, can you come on this little Facebook Live to talk about the people's budget with me? He'll say yes. He'll make a way for it to happen. So he's been a dear friend. I can say even with this lawsuit against the Global Network Foundation, before we filed the lawsuit, we wrote an open letter to the Global Network Foundation, and a bunch of people who you would think signed on did not, but Sean did. He didn't think about, well, what does this mean for me? Or, the Global Network Foundation has all the money. Why would I go against them? He didn't say that. He said, I know Melina's work. I know the boots on the ground work of these chapters. And so I'm going to sign on and I'm going to share it. And so I'm somebody who's loyal to people who seem loyal to our people. And that's been my experience with Sean. And I know not everybody loves him the way I love him, but nobody's shown me any reason to question him.
What's the best case scenario? I'm going to take winning the presidency off the table for a minute, because every candidate says they want to win. I'm assuming the best case for everybody running for president is that they become president. That goal aside, what is the other best case scenario? What's the ideal outcome from this for you?
That our work and our message begin to take hold, right? And I think we're starting to see it happen even without this campaign, or without me in the campaign, right? We are seeing people rise up and say free Palestine. We are seeing, even though the Democrats, what did Barack Obama try to say? Oh, defund the police is a snappy slogan, right?
Yes.
But now,
I was hot that day.
Huh?
I was pissed off that day when he said that. So condescending.
And I don't even think it's that snappy, but it just means what it, it
Right.
says what it means. And so I feel like the world, though, is starting to question, why are we spending half of our budget on police when crime is down? That doesn't make any sense to me. We spending half our budget on police, but we got people living on Skid Row, living on the streets. So I believe it's starting to take hold. What I believe also, so second best case scenario, is that work, those efforts, those visions, those radical Black visions will translate into what our world looks like. It's not going to be, an immediate, it's not going to happen in 7 months, but I think we can speed up the pace of it. And, that's what my prayer is on this Eid. Yeah.
That is a beautiful prayer. I'm sharing that prayer. I'm echoing that prayer. And I'm wishing you and Cornell the best of luck on this campaign run, this presidential run. You've already inspired thousands, maybe tens of thousands, hell, maybe even hundreds of thousands of people already. And as you hit the road over this home stretch of the next 6 months, I fully expect more people to be inspired, more eyes to be open, a more radical agenda to be articulated, and I can't wait to see how this thing plays out. Melina, best of luck to you on your presidential run. Congrats on being the first Muslim to be vice presidential ticket presence. Congrats to you on everything that's going on in your life, and of course, Eid Mubarak.
Eid Kareem. Thank you so much, brother.
It is my pleasure. Everybody, that was the legendary, the wonderful, the brilliant Melina Abdullah, Dr. Melina Abdullah, who is running for vice president with Dr. Cornell West. What a ticket, what a presence. There's a lot of questions y'all have. There's a lot of questions people have. Some people are always going to say, don't run if you're not running Democrat. Some people are always going to say, don't run if you can't win. But she raises some powerful points and some powerful questions about what it means to not hold the Democratic Party accountable. These are the questions that y'all ask. These are the questions that we all deserve answers to. And that is, how do we mount a third party movement? How do we mount or create a radical alternative if we don't run? I don't have the answers. I'm not sure how I feel about this. I struggle. After watching 4 years of Trump, I couldn't sit back and watch another 4, and I voted Biden for the first time in decades. I voted for it. The only time in my life I voted for a Democrat for president. And I did so probably because I was voting my fears and not my aspirations. But I was making a pragmatic judgment. And this time around, we got more pragmatic judgments to make. Trump is still looming. The Supreme Court is still in the balance. We got a lot of questions to ask. We also have a Democratic Party that takes us for granted. We have a Biden administration who is only a better alternative because of how awful Trump is, not because of anything inherently good about Biden's political run. These are the issues. These are the things that we're wrestling with, that we're struggling with, and we got to figure this thing out. And that's why we're here. Everybody, stay with me. I got 2 more quick stories I want to talk to you about before we leave night school. And after that, of course, we got the Gaza update. Stay right here. Much more coming up with night school.
Right? You make her happy, so you'll be all right.
And happy wife normally is about happy life for me.
Right. That's what I'm saying. It ain't about her, it's about you.
So Van says that because Jewish people showed up for Black Americans during the Civil Rights era, he now feels compelled to stand with them now. Let me be clear.
What's the white liberal ideology I'm following?
I'm not saying you.
No, that's what you said. So I'm saying, which one?
No one is free until we are all free. There is no room for any injustice.
Peace, family. We're still here with Night School. Another story that we need to talk about is Nate Robinson. Former New York Knicks guard Nate Robinson recently revealed that he does not have long to live if he does not receive a kidney transplant. During an interview with the Daily Mail, the 3-time slam dunk champion said this. He said, "I know that I don't have long to." This is very challenging to read for me, because his brother is somebody we grew up watching. He's our peer. He's my age. He said, "I know that I don't have long if I can't get a kidney. I know I'm not going to have long to live. So I just want to make the best of it as much as I can." If you didn't know, Nate Robinson has been dealing with kidney failure for 6 years. He had a surgery in 2022, and he is currently on dialysis. He goes to dialysis a lot. He goes 3 days a week, and every day that he goes 4 hours a day. So you're talking about 12 hours a week he's spending just in dialysis. Nate Robinson is 5'9", 5'10", maybe, flying through the air. It's an extraordinary athlete, one of the most gifted athletes you probably ever see in real life. But when it comes to kidney disease, there's nothing you can do about it. What's scary to me is that somebody could be this healthy, this strong, and this rich, well-resourced, well-connected, but still can't get what's necessary, what's needed to survive. I don't want to wrap my mind around the idea that Nate Robinson could die. I don't want to wrap my idea around the idea that Nate Robinson could die from a preventable illness. That is extremely, extremely scary. That is I can't. I don't even know how to wrap my mind around it. That we would all sort of watch Nate Robinson die is stunning to me, and I don't believe that we will. My faith is that we will find an answer, that we will find a solution, but that only happens if we act. So the word right now, the call right now, the charge right now is probably a better word, is for us to fight. It's for us to struggle together, to organize together, to build together, and find a resource, not just for Nate Robinson. Obviously, we want him to have a kidney, but we want everybody who's on those lists to find resources. We want everybody who needs a body part or an organ to get one. That requires us to do something. So if you know someone who has access to a kidney, if you know someone who's willing to be tested to find out if they're a match, please do so. Please advance their name. I don't know what Nate needs in the meantime, but we're praying for him. We're praying for his family. We're wishing him the best. And we're hoping that we get some kind of different outcome. All right, I want to move on to one more story before we go. And it's a story that normally would be at the top of the show, but we had an extraordinary guest in Melina Abdullah. So we didn't get to it. But guns allowed in Tennessee classrooms. The Tennessee State Senate has passed a bill that allows teachers to be armed. I'm going to say that again. The Tennessee State Senate has passed a bill that allows teachers to be armed in a vote that went 26-5 only in Tennessee. 1325, Bill 1325 was passed, which grants teachers permission to carry concealed handguns on school grounds without having to notify any of their colleagues, without having to notify any of their parents. Now, the legislation is aimed to deter possible school shooters from attacking, from coming to school with weapons, from shooting up the school. But protesters have been loud in saying that this would only make schools less safe. And what's needed is gun restrictions, not looser gun laws. Amongst these protesters are the families of victims from last year's shooting at Covenant School in Nashville. It was an ugly shooting. The bill requires teachers to have a handgun carry permit and to have written permission from the school principal and from the local police. These educators will also get 40 hours of training and a clear background check. Now, you should already have a clear background check before you even become a public school teacher. But now they're saying you need 40 hours of training. I like the idea of training for a weapon. I think anybody who carries a gun, and I believe people should be allowed to carry guns, anybody who carries a gun should be forced to get training. I own guns. I ain't got near training lesson mandatory put on me. Any training I have is because I just wanted to be trained because I wanted to be good at it. But my point is, it is quite easy to get a gun and not be trained. And now they want to put teachers, even with 40 hours of training, in a position where they can walk around carrying a gun, a concealed gun. You ain't got to tell nobody. That scares me for multiple reasons. One, if somebody shoots up the school, if somebody shows up with an AK or whatever and wants to shoot up the school, it's unlikely that a few armed teachers are going to be able to take them down. The whole good guy with the gun beats the bad guy with a gun thing is Second Amendment, NRA, Charlton Heston mythology. The second thing is, people with guns, you see this in home invasions or just robberies in general. People who have guns often get guns taken from them. If you work in a school that's so rough or so dangerous that you think you need a concealed weapon, then there's a good chance that the people who you're afraid of might not be afraid of you, and they might take your weapon. The other thing here is we live in a world, in a country more specifically, with extraordinary amounts of racism. Everywhere you look, Black people are overcharged. Black people get longer sentences. Black people pay more for the same stuff. Black people have the same credit score and don't get the same interest rates. Black people die more at birth. Black people don't live as long. And guess what? Black people get shot by the police. And if you walk into a school and the teacher has a concealed permit, there's no reason to believe that the teacher's going to be any different. If you look at all the data, Black kids get suspended more. Black kids get expelled more. Black people get detentions more. So Schools are already following the same scripts for black people that the rest of the world does. So now you're going to give that teacher who's already suspended me because I'm black, who's already put me out of the classroom because I'm black, who's already given me a lower grade because I'm black, now has the ability to shoot me because I'm black. Nah, I'm going to pass on that, fam. This is a dangerous, dangerous rule. We should be figuring out how to get guns out of the hands of the people who should not have them. I agree with that. We should create space for people to engage in forms of self-defense. I will always be good with that. But what we can't do, what we will not do, what I will not do, is pretend that giving a bunch of teachers who already don't love black people, potentially, in the world don't love black people. It's nothing about Tennessee. It's just an educated guess. And who's afraid of black people, and who have irrational narratives around black people. He walks through bullets. Like that's what they said about Mike Brown and Ferguson when Darren Wilson killed him. If all that is the case, then it seems that allowing someone to have a direct physical control over my life, my outcomes, my survival is a hell of a bad idea as a black person. So no, teachers shouldn't have. But even if all the students were white, it's the same thing. I don't want the teacher that's afraid of my boy or my girl or who hates them to now be able to shoot them and say it was self-defense. I don't think teachers come up with some diabolical scheme and just go around shooting kids. I'm not suggesting that. But people are like toothpaste. When pressure's applied, what's inside comes out. And if you're afraid of black people, or you hate black people, or you have an irrational conceptualization of who and what black people are, all that stuff is going to come out in that moment. So that is a very, 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 very bad idea. It's not surprising because it's Tennessee, and that's the kind of thing that people want to see, because they're gun nuts and they believe that they're closer to safety if the people in Tennessee could have weapons, or they live in Tennessee and just want to be able to do it. Whatever the reason is, it's not safe, it's not healthy, it's not wise. Anyway, y'all, before you go, I want to send a word out to my Muslim family around the city of Philadelphia. Earlier today, there was a shooting at Eid al-Fitr festival. 3 people were injured, 5 were shot. This was at a West Philadelphia Ramadan event or Eid event, and there's not a lot of good news here. It's just a lot of shooting. It's a lot of violence in a city that has always been marked by it, but now seems off the hook. I still live in Philadelphia, so I can tell you, Muslims all around the country, Muslims all around the world celebrated Eid al-Fitr with dignity, with love, with care, with safety, with great joy, and I'm so proud of that. But for this small, isolated incident where people were shooting at each other, I'm not even sure they were Muslim, but whatever they were shooting at each other, ruining the Eid celebration for everybody in the area. I hope that we can find a way to make up for it. I'm hoping that we can restore or do something restorative for the people who had to be there with their babies, with their family, with their husbands, with their wives, with their sons, with their daughters, and watch people get shot as they're supposed to be celebrating the end of a month of peace and joy and love and sacrifice. It's awful either way, but I wanted to send a shout out to the people of West Philly and let them know I haven't forgotten about them. I'm not ignoring that shooting. I think it's a terrible tragedy. It's a tragedy that, honestly, I wish there was more that I could do. That's all I can say. I wish that there was more that I could do. Anyway, family, that is the episode of Night School for the night. It's been a pleasure talking to y'all. Make sure you hit the like button if you like what I've been doing tonight. If you liked what Melina Abdullah was doing tonight, make sure you hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, and become a member of the of the conversation, of the chat, and also hit the join button and become a monthly paid subscriber to the channel, where you get lots of perks, you get lots of bonuses, but most importantly, you help us build and sustain a channel that I believe is doing some good in the world, and I hope to do even more. I want to thank y'all for watching. I'll see y'all again tomorrow. Peace.